has confirmed it's launched an attack on Iran.
At 7:10 in the morning, the silence over the Persian Gulf is broken. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a hatch opens on the deck of a US destroyer. Within seconds, a column of fire erupts into the sky. A Tomahawk cruise missile climbs, levels out, and disappears into the pale morning light, racing toward the Iranian coastline at nearly 900 kilometers per hour. 90 seconds later, 8 more missiles follow, then 25 more. Within minutes, the largest precision strike operation in the region in decades has begun. But the missiles are only the beginning. Hundreds of kilometers away, Iranian radar operators stare at glowing screens that show nothing unusual. The sky appears quiet. Commercial air traffic routes are empty. The coastal air defense grid reports no incoming threats. What they cannot see are the signals already flooding their frequencies. Electronic warfare aircraft circling far beyond Iranian airspace are quietly saturating radar bands with interference. At the same time, small unmanned aircraft, decoys designed to imitate real strike platforms, begin crossing the border. By the time Iranian air defenses realize something is wrong, the real attack wave is already in motion. High above Iraqi airspace, a formation of strike fighters slips through the darkness at high altitude. Their radar signatures are barely detectable, their communications almost silent. Each aircraft carries precision-guided weapons designed for one purpose: disabling the infrastructure that allows a military to see, communicate, and respond. The pilots have rehearsed this moment for months, possibly years. Their targets are already loaded into their systems, coordinates verified down to the meter. On the ground, in cities and military complexes across Iran, the morning routine continues. Traffic begins to build on major roads. Naval bases along the coast prepare for daily operations. In underground command centers, officers review intelligence briefings that say tensions are rising, but no one expects what will happen next. Then the first explosions arrive. Cruise missiles strike within seconds of each other across multiple provinces. Radar stations go dark. Communication hubs fall silent. Fuel depots erupt into towering pillars of flame visible for kilometers. At a naval installation along the Gulf, shockwaves roll through reinforced concrete hangars as precision bombs penetrate their roofs before detonating deep inside. And the strikes keep coming. What makes this operation different is not just the number of weapons launched, but the coordination behind them. Satellites, surveillance aircraft, electronic warfare platforms, drones, and stealth fighters all move as parts of the same machine. Every radar emission is tracked. Every radio transmission is analyzed. Every mobile launcher that tries to relocate risks being detected within minutes. But war plans never unfold exactly as expected. Hidden missile units begin moving through mountain roads. Air defense batteries attempt to re-establish radar coverage. Commanders scramble to understand which attacks are real and which are decoys. In the chaos of the first hour, both sides are forced to make decisions that could determine how far the conflict spreads. Because this is not just a strike. It is a race between detection and destruction, between command and confusion, and between technology designed to see everything and defenses built to survive the first wave. And in the next few hours, the balance of that race may decide what happens next in one of the most volatile regions on Earth. At exactly 7:10 local time, the calm surface of the Persian Gulf is broken by a sudden flash of fire from the deck of a US Navy destroyer, positioned hundreds of kilometers from the Iranian coastline. The ship, operating as part of a carrier strike group in the region, opens the first phase of a coordinated long-range strike operation. A vertical launch cell erupts with flame as a BGM-109 Tomahawk cruise missile rockets into the sky, tilts toward the horizon, and disappears eastward. Within 90 seconds, more launch hatches open. One by one, additional missiles leave their tubes, forming the first wave of a barrage designed to reach targets deep inside Iranian territory without warning. The Tomahawk has long been one of the United States Navy's primary precision strike weapons. Capable of flying more than 1,500 kilometers and navigating at extremely low altitude, the missile follows pre-programmed terrain maps and GPS guidance, to approach targets while staying below many radar detection zones. Its turbofan engine allows it to cruise steadily just a few dozen meters above the ground or sea surface, weaving through valleys or skimming across the water to avoid interception. For decades, it has been used in major U.S. military operations, from the opening strikes of the Gulf War to campaigns in Iraq and Syria, making it one of the most recognizable long-range strike systems in modern warfare. On this morning, the missiles fan out across several routes. Some head north toward radar installations near the Zagros mountain range. Others follow the coastline, programmed to approach naval infrastructure from unexpected angles. Each missile carries a high-explosive warhead designed to destroy hardened structures, such as command bunkers, radar arrays, fuel storage depots, and communication centers. In planning rooms weeks earlier, analysts had studied satellite imagery down to individual buildings, selecting targets that would weaken Iran's ability to coordinate a military response in the early minutes of the operation. Far inside Iranian territory, air defense operators are beginning their shifts. Radar screens sweep steadily across the sky, tracking commercial airliners, regional cargo flights, and occasional patrol aircraft. Nothing unusual appears. The reason is simple. Tomahawk missiles are notoriously difficult to detect early because they fly so low. Instead of approaching from high altitude like traditional aircraft, they hug the terrain, sometimes descending to less than 50 meters above ground level. At the same time, several electronic warfare aircraft flying far from Iranian airspace begin transmitting powerful bursts of interference. Their goal is not to blind every radar, but to clutter certain frequencies and delay recognition of the incoming strike. According to later intelligence assessments, the interference reduces detection range for some coastal radar stations by nearly 40% during the first minutes of the attack. In addition, small unmanned aerial vehicles, launched hours earlier from distant bases, start crossing toward Iranian territory. These drones are programmed to mimic the radar signatures of larger aircraft, forcing air defense systems to divide their attention. Within the first 5 minutes of the launch, more than 30 cruise missiles are already racing towards separate targets. Their onboard computers continuously compare real-time terrain data with stored digital maps, adjusting course automatically. One missile passes only a few kilometers south of a busy shipping corridor in the Gulf before turning inland. Another climbs briefly to clear a mountain ridge before descending again into a narrow valley. In a radar station outside the coastal city of Bandar Abbas, an operator finally notices something strange. A brief signal flicker appears at the edge of the display, then vanishes. At first, it looks like a technical glitch, the kind caused by weather or background interference. Seconds later, several more irregular returns appear, moving fast and low across the radar sweep. By the time technicians begin rechecking their systems, the first missiles are already less than 3 minutes from impact. Across the region, the opening phase of the strike is unfolding exactly as planners intended. Fast, quiet, and almost invisible until the final moments. The goal of these initial launches is not just destruction, but confusion, forcing defenders to react to threats they can barely see while the next wave of the operation moves into position. And in modern warfare, those first few minutes can decide whether an entire defense network holds together or begins to unravel. Within minutes of the first launches, the second phase of the strike begins to unfold. What initially looked like a limited missile attack quickly expands into a coordinated barrage aimed at several strategic military installations across southern Iran. The Tomahawk cruise missiles launched earlier are now approaching their targets, flying low across deserts, mountain passes, and coastal terrain. Their routes were carefully calculated to arrive almost simultaneously, overwhelming local defenses and striking critical infrastructure before commanders on the ground can fully understand the scale of the assault. The first impacts occur near the Iranian naval facilities along the Persian Gulf. At a logistics complex outside Bandar Abbas, a Tomahawk descends sharply during its final seconds of flight, using terrain-following radar and GPS guidance to line up precisely with its programmed target. The missile strikes a large fuel storage depot used to support naval patrol vessels operating in the Strait of Hormuz. The explosion sends a column of fire hundreds of meters into the air, visible from nearby coastal roads. Within seconds, a second missile slams into a communications building only a few hundred meters away, destroying satellite relay equipment responsible for coordinating patrol movements in the region. Almost simultaneously, another cluster of missiles approaches a naval support base near the industrial port of Asaluye. The facility, which serves as both a logistics point and a staging area for fast attack craft used by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, becomes one of the primary targets of the barrage. 2 Tomahawks strike reinforced maintenance hangars used to store small missile boats, penetrating the roofs before detonating inside. The blast waves ripple across the dockyard, shattering windows and sending debris across the concrete piers. A third missile targets the base's central command building, disabling radio systems that link the base to coastal defense networks. Farther east, the port of Chabahar is also caught in the expanding wave of strikes. Known as one of Iran's major deepwater ports on the Gulf of Oman, the area hosts both civilian shipping facilities and military infrastructure. According to later satellite imagery analysis, several cruise missiles were programmed to strike specific sections of the port's operational control zone. One missile hits a coastal radar installation responsible for monitoring maritime traffic in the surrounding waters. Another strikes a warehouse complex believed to store spare parts and equipment for naval patrol craft. What makes this phase particularly difficult to defend against is the precision and timing of the incoming weapons. Tomahawks can approach from multiple directions, sometimes circling a target area briefly before diving toward their assigned coordinates. Their flight profiles allow them to exploit gaps in radar coverage, especially in coastal regions where terrain and buildings create natural blind spots. While Iran maintains several layers of air defense, including systems derived from Russian S-300 technology and domestically developed radar networks, low-flying cruise missiles remain one of the most challenging threats to intercept. At several bases, air defense crews attempt to activate short-range missile systems designed to engage incoming threats at low altitude. In one reported case near a coastal radar station, a surface-to-air missile battery launches 2 interceptors after briefly detecting a fast-moving object approaching at under 100 meters altitude. The intercept attempt comes too late. The cruise missile strikes its target seconds later, destroying the radar array the battery was attempting to protect. The barrage continues for nearly 15 minutes, with impacts recorded across multiple provinces. Analysts later estimate that more than 30 precision-guided cruise missiles were used during this phase alone. Many of the targets are selected not just for their military value, but for their role in connecting different parts of Iran's defense infrastructure. Communications hubs, radar nodes, and logistical storage sites are struck in quick succession, creating a ripple effect that slows the coordination of defensive responses. By the time the final missiles of the second wave reach their targets, several coastal installations are already burning. Emergency crews rush toward damaged structures while military commanders attempt to piece together what has happened. Reports begin arriving from different bases almost simultaneously. Explosions at fuel depots, destroyed radar towers, communications failures. In less than 20 minutes, the carefully timed barrage has struck multiple strategic sites, leaving defenders struggling to determine whether the attack is over or only the beginning of something much larger. While the first missile impacts are still echoing across Iran's southern coast, a new phase of the operation begins hundreds of kilometers away, in the dark skies over the Middle East. Aircraft that had been waiting outside Iranian radar coverage now start moving toward their launch positions. Unlike the cruise missiles that opened the strike, these platforms are designed to attack with speed, flexibility, and real-time targeting updates. Their mission is far more complex. Dismantle the remaining air defense network and begin destroying Iran's deeper military infrastructure. Among the first aircraft approaching the region are electronic warfare planes, tasked with identifying and suppressing active radar signals. Modern air defense systems rely on radar to detect, track, and guide missiles toward incoming aircraft. Disrupting that radar picture, even briefly, can create windows for strike aircraft to operate safely. Flying well outside Iranian territory, these aircraft deploy powerful jamming systems capable of interfering with multiple radar frequencies simultaneously. At the same time, specialized anti-radiation missiles are prepared for launch. These weapons are designed to lock onto radar emissions themselves, turning the act of turning on a radar into a risk. Within minutes, several Iranian air defense radars begin emitting stronger signals as operators attempt to identify the sources of the earlier explosions along the coast. That reaction triggers the next step of the plan. Anti-radiation missiles are launched toward the active radar sites. Traveling at high speed, they home in on the electronic signatures produced by the radar transmitters. One radar installation positioned on elevated terrain west of Shiraz reportedly attempts to shut down its system after detecting the incoming missile warning, but the weapon continues toward the last known coordinates and detonates close enough to destroy the radar array and its control equipment. With sections of the air defense network now disrupted, strike aircraft begin entering Iranian airspace from multiple directions. Some approach at high altitude, while others remain low to reduce radar exposure. Among the aircraft used in this stage are multi-role fighters, capable of delivering precision-guided bombs. These aircraft carry a variety of weapons, including satellite-guided joint direct attack munitions, commonly known as JDAMs, and smaller glide bombs designed to strike targets with minimal collateral damage. The first targets for these aircraft are command and administrative facilities connected to Iran's military structure. Intelligence gathered over months has identified several buildings believed to host coordination centers responsible for managing regional military units. In one case, a group of strike fighters releases small-diameter bombs toward a large government complex on the outskirts of a major city. These bombs are designed to penetrate roofs and reinforced floors before detonating, maximizing their effectiveness against internal command centers and communication rooms. At nearly the same moment, additional aircraft target radar installations and missile batteries that were not destroyed during the earlier missile barrage. Surface-to-air missile systems depend on tracking radars to guide their interceptors. Destroying those radars can render the launchers ineffective, even if the missiles themselves remain intact. Satellite-guided bombs strike several radar stations positioned along mountain ridges, where they were originally placed to extend detection range over long distances. Iranian air defense crews respond quickly where they can. In some areas, short-range missile systems attempt to engage incoming aircraft based on infrared tracking rather than radar guidance. Fighter aircraft from nearby air bases are reportedly scrambled as well, though the effectiveness of those responses varies depending on how quickly local commanders receive accurate information about the developing situation. While these engagements unfold in the air, another mission begins deeper inside the country. Intelligence analysts had long identified mobile missile launchers, vehicles capable of firing medium-range ballistic missiles, as one of the most difficult targets in any potential conflict. These launchers can relocate rapidly, hide inside tunnels or mountain shelters, and emerge only briefly to prepare for launch. To track them, a combination of satellite imagery, electronic surveillance, and reconnaissance drones is used. In mountainous regions known for hosting missile units, surveillance platforms begin scanning roads, valleys, and storage sites for unusual movement. When a suspected transporter-erector launcher vehicle is detected, coordinates are transmitted to nearby strike aircraft. Some of these targets are engaged using precision glide bombs, capable of hitting vehicles from many kilometers away. In several cases, explosions are reported along remote mountain roads, where launch vehicles had attempted to relocate after receiving early warning of the strikes. Another set of targets involves large storage depots believed to contain drones, missile components, and other equipment used by Iran's military and affiliated forces. Many of these facilities are located within industrial zones or partially underground bunkers designed to protect sensitive equipment. Destroying them requires weapons capable of penetrating hardened structures. Precision-guided bombs equipped with delayed fuses are used so that the explosion occurs only after the weapon has passed through reinforced concrete. Satellite imagery released later would reportedly show multiple storage buildings severely damaged in one such complex. Analysts suggest that hundreds of unmanned aerial vehicles and drone components may have been stored in the facility prior to the strike. The destruction of these depots is considered strategically important because unmanned aircraft have become a major component of Iran's regional military strategy. Throughout this stage of the operation, coordination between different platforms remains constant. Surveillance aircraft monitor the airspace for new radar emissions or aircraft activity. Strike fighters receive updated target data in real time. Electronic warfare systems continue disrupting radar signals that attempt to re-establish coverage after earlier losses. The entire operation depends on maintaining that flow of information so that every aircraft and weapon acts as part of a larger network rather than as isolated units. Despite the intensity of the attacks, defenders attempt to adapt. Some missile launch units reportedly disperse into mountainous terrain where terrain features make detection more difficult. Mobile communication vehicles attempt to establish new command links after several major communication hubs were destroyed earlier. In at least one region, radar operators switch to backup systems operating on different frequencies in an effort to avoid the anti-radiation missiles that targeted earlier transmitters. But the cumulative impact of the strikes begins to show. Several radar sites remain offline, reducing the overall detection range of the air defense network. Command facilities that previously coordinated multiple military units are no longer transmitting. Reports from different regions arrive slowly, or not at all. In modern warfare, the ability to communicate and share information often determines whether a defense system can function effectively. As those connections weaken, even intact weapon systems can become far less effective. By the time the aircraft involved in these missions begin leaving Iranian airspace, dozens of additional targets have been struck beyond those hit during the initial missile barrage. Radar stations, missile batteries, command centers, and weapons depots have all been targeted in rapid succession. Yet even as pilots turn their aircraft back towards safer airspace, commanders monitoring the operation understand that the situation remains fluid. Some missile units may still be active, and parts of the defense network could recover if given time. What began with cruise missiles launched from distant ships has now evolved into a complex air campaign targeting the backbone of Iran's military infrastructure. And while the strikes carried out during these hours have already altered the balance of the battlefield, the question facing both sides is the same: whether the damage inflicted so far will prevent further escalation, or whether it will trigger the next and far more unpredictable stage of the conflict. As the final phase of the operation unfolds, the pace of the strikes begins to slow, but the intensity does not. After hours of coordinated missile launches and air attacks, the objective shifts from opening the battlefield to ensuring that what remains of Iran's military infrastructure cannot quickly recover. Aircraft returning for additional sorties focus on targets that were identified during the earlier waves but could not be engaged immediately. These include backup communication facilities, hardened command nodes, and transportation routes believed to support missile and drone units. Military planners understand that modern armed forces depend heavily on communication networks. Destroying radar stations and weapons depots weakens defensive capability, but disrupting coordination can have an even greater effect. Throughout the operation, signals intelligence platforms had been mapping Iran's digital and radio communication traffic. As the strikes progress, several aircraft are directed toward relay towers and data routing facilities that help link regional commands with central headquarters. Precision-guided munitions are used to disable these structures, often targeting power systems and transmission equipment rather than surrounding buildings.